7. Constance. "You're coming out with us," announced Chloe, particularly ripping her costume off and kicking it to the one side. She took a deep breath, and I didn't blame her. The corsets on the last costume of the night were very tight. I will know. I had to tie them. I shook my head and said, "No, thank you. I really couldn't go out tonight. Not after the very long day I had. It was just a Tuesday after all. Why was everyone making Tuesdays so dramatic today?" Chloe grabbed my hand and particularly yanked my shoulders out of its socket, pulling me toward her. "Makeover time." "No, please, no. No makeover time. I hated makeover time." I was pushed unceremoniously into the chair in front of one of the mirrors. I looked at the fright. It was true, and I did enjoy looking presentable, but I hated being dressed up like some doll. This happened every few months, and I really had no idea what was wrong with my normal appearance. I looked over at Lily, sitting in front of the mirror. She was already dressed in her regular clothes and was carefully applying her going-out makeup after having removed her performance makeup. She looked at me in the mirror and shrugged. Lily was never going to be my savior. The girls knew I didn't fight back. I never did. They enjoyed it too much, and I didn't want to make a fuss, no matter how much I disliked their poking and prodding. And of course, the underlying message of how you look isn't good enough. I quickly turned to her vision of Cinderella at the ball, dark eyeliner, bold lipstick, even some rouge, and passed over to Mirabelle, who handed me a black dress with a satin sheen. "Come on, hurry up," she ordered, so I hurried. I stared at myself and pulled on the dress. I didn't look bad at all. I never had any issue with the end result. I didn't look like me. I like my makeup a certain way, a little softer, my clothes a little less showy. It wasn't just I didn't mind looking good. I just thought I already did, except for today. That is, today I had been a complete disaster. Maybe the makeover was rented this one time. "Let's go, let's go!" There was Lily's familiar insistent whine. The order was followed, and soon all of us, including a very exhausted me, were sweeping out of the hotel and onto the boardwalk, peals of ringing laughter. Chloe linked her arm in mine, gave me a wink. "You're a good sport," she said. I always liked her. She had the reputation of the typical Surrey redhead, but to me she seemed the most down-to-earth of any of the girls in the chorus. "I'm a pushover," I replied. I was able to be a bit more honest with her than the most. "You should work on that," she replied. I nodded. She was right, but I didn't know where to start. I couldn't get past the notion that it's best to keep it all inside. My sisters could be outgoing and share everything they felt because it was safe to. Molly was so lovely through and through, and Lily was harmless and silly, even in her demanding ways. But the real me, the inside me, I was certain no one wanted to see that, to see my frustration, to see what I really thought of the world and those in it. No one will understand. It wouldn't work. To thine own self be true. Shakespeare wrote that. But Shakespeare hadn't been a girl. We turned down the street, following behind the others, and toward the red flashing sign that read, "The Rose Club." It might have looked like a dive from outside, but it was one of the high-end clubs in Atlantic City, and expensive. "Don't worry," said Chloe, as we walked down the short flight of steps into the entrance. "Some swell is paying for all of us girls. Silly fellow, silly fellow." Silly indeed if he thought paying for these girls meant he'd get anything special in return. They weren't stupid, these ladies. They knew how to handle these kind of guys. You could almost feel sorry for them, the way they fawn and spend, especially in such high immense hopes. But not really. All I could do was nod. I hate being paid for by anyone, even people with good intentions. I like not having to rely on anyone. Maybe it was seeing Molly and Lily receive so many gifts over the years, but I didn't want that. I wanted to be self-sufficient. We checked our coats and were met by the wall of noise and swirl of color. The place was packed, but like a school of fish. Our group herded together and managed to acquire a corner table, onto which purses and gloves exploded in colorful mess. "Do you want a drink?" asked Chloe. "Oh," I replied, feeling appreciated, overwhelmed. "I guess a soda pop." Chloe laughed. "I'm going to get you a real drink." I meant to tell her that I was too young and honestly not particularly interested in alcohol, but she held up her finger and looked at me intently, so I didn't say anything, and she quickly vanished into the crowd. I felt suddenly alone. It was interesting, really, when you thought about it. Here I was surrounded by so many people, and yet I could go for a walk by myself along the boardwalk and feel perfectly content. Normally I would be happy just to observe. This was not my first party, or my first time at the nightclub. I like watching people. I enjoyed seeing happy faces and watching them laugh and dance together. I like when life was colorful and pretty, when just a little wild. Cares and worries were set aside. But today felt so different. All day something had been tickling my spine. I shook my head. Had to been dive this morning. I could still feel the wind against my face. I felt my stomach turn over, looking down at the water far below me, the inky blackness. Suddenly all I wanted to do was go home and go to bed, and wake up refreshed with a new day of positivities in front of me. My unfocused gaze lay on the familiar face, the rich kid from earlier, the one I seen darting about around the base of the diving platform. He was standing with a group of large, usurious men. That kind of man who always laughed just a little too loudly at parties, who never quite finished their drinks but almost refilled their glasses. The rich kid looked miserable. My heart went out to him then. We all had our own problems. It's all related. Even those who live in places have days where the walls feel like they were caving in, I'm assumed. I mean, we're all human after all. I was watching the rich kid closely now, wondering about him, who he really was. Why his father needed to shoot that film of his, when I noticed a different young man walking toward me suddenly. He crossed into the path between me and the rich kid and smiled as he did. He was quite handsome, I observed. Dark hair parted neatly, a perfectly cut suit, and nibble in one cheek. It didn't occur to me that he was walking toward me until he started talking and said, "Ice meeting across a crowded room." I stared at him. He sounded very close, like he had just materialized right in front of me, then hand outreached it. "What?" I said. It was the wrong thing to say, but when did I ever manage to say the right thing? The young man laughed. "I saw you looking at me. I must say, I never been more flattered." I just stared at him, at his deep brown eyes, the slight crinkle at the edges. He's assumed by me. Oh, how I dislike amusing people like this. People either thought I was rude or amusing. I was an object of some kind of fascination. All because I couldn't quite say the words I wanted to the way one ought to. Yet the other reason, just keep everything to myself. No one seemed to understand me. More than that, no one tried to understand me. "Oh, well," I said, utterly confused, and then it hit me. Somehow this man had thought my staring was directed at him. Now my cheeks were definitely burning. Thank goodness the room was over warm and he wouldn't notice. "I'm Andrew," he said. I realized his outreached hand was meant for me to take, and I grabbed it awkwardly. He gave my hand a little shake and then released it. I looked at him some more. Truly he was very good looking, tall, slender, but strong. There was something also pleasing about his presence, almost calming. And, he laughed, and I no longer particularly calm. What was I missing? "Your name is?" he asked. Of course! I wasn't stupid. I knew how introductions work. "Oh, yes, of course. I'm Constance." "Nice to meet you," replied Andrew. Now I was starting to slowly feel frustrated. He spoke with expectations in his voice, and stood there silently, as if I was supposed to read his mind. But I honestly was rather confused. I didn't generally get approached by anyone in these situations by now. When I remembered the dress, and the makeup, and the hair, and oh, my goodness, he thought I was staring at him before. This is the boy-girl thing happening now, isn't it? I asked myself. You weren't a child. You can do this. It wasn't if I'd never been on an outing with a boy before, or even kissed once. That one time. Oh, how Lily will laugh at me now with my chance little ways, as she called them. Where was she? Nice to meet you too. Though, was it maybe too stressful, really? Why did I suddenly miss feeling so very alone? How was it I now missed the strange thrill in my soul and the memory of the cold water dive? Were those feelings better than the frustrated confusion I was feeling now? I think yes. At least I understood the former. The latter was so out of my control. Care to dance? Not really. Yes, that would be lovely. So that happened. He took my hand gently. I noticed this time how soft and warm it was. I almost noticed how clump and cold mine were. How he must regret doing this, but he didn't seem to. He escorted me to the dance floor, and then the other hand was on my waist. That didn't help my flustered feelings, but I focused on the music and then on the dance steps. I wasn't a bad dancer after all. All were quite good at such things, the Grace sisters. Even the one who refused to go into the show business, who was happy behind the scenes, even she, that is to say, even I enjoyed a good turn about the room. And good it was. He's very elegant and sure-footed. He had grace. He was no Fred Hestard, but who in real life was? I start to feel dizzy. If you look at me, it will help, he said, clearly noticing. Well, that was the problem now, wasn't it? I was purposely trying not to look at him. Looking at him made me feel very valuable, because I rather liked looking at him. I looked at him, he smiled, I smiled. Maybe it's okay to feel flustered sometimes. Maybe it's a good feeling. Maybe it's a really good feeling. I felt myself settle into his arms, not quite relaxed, but not. It was nice. And then everything went black.